Hey, this is conversation
Hey,
number 57. I'm here with Josiah Neely. I gotta get this hat's been like obviously a little
it's
worse
looking a
for wear, and
little.
also it's the fall, so I gotta get my black hat soon. So I'm getting rid of this.
Yeah, it's starting to
Uh,
look a little Sam Neill in Jurassic Park.
you know what? We will be talking about paleontology right now, so that's a good segue. Yeah, so I'm Razib Khan. I'm here with Josiah Neely of Art Street. We're gonna do the conversation. We've been doing this for a while now, so we're gonna start with science, which is a little different. We usually talk about politics, just whatever. But so there is a new paper out where most of the authors are Chinese. It is a Chinese um, fossil, and it is at I don't know how to say this, Yunxian, I think Yunxian. So I'll just like say the title of the paper for the people out there who want to check it out. The phylogenetic position of the Yunxian cranium elucidates the origin of Homo longi and the Denisovans. And so it's a pretty straightforward paper in some ways. There's not that many figures, but the methods are, um, interesting. They're computational. So just the summary here is. They found a skull in China. In fact, they have like three skulls in China. The first one is kind of crappy. This is Yunxian 2. This skull is it was reconstructed in a way it was smashed, and they used a computational algorithm to unsmash it. In terms of like, okay, like assuming like certain pressures from certain directions, it would look like this, and then you reverse the pressures computationally, and so it kind of like made the face shape and everything what it was
Sounds
originally,
like
right?
voodoo. Sounds like
It's a,
voodoo.
it's a little weird, a little weird. And then there's Yunxian 3, which is apparently it's like going to be a paper soon, and they're keeping it secret. But the problem is like they already know, the Chinese group already knows the result of Yunxian 3. So this paper about Yunxian 2, it's like kind of should be foreshadowing. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's weird if it's like
Right.
contradictory to Yunshen 3 because they already know the results of Yunshen 3. So probably this paper is telling us something about Yunshen 3 by omission or, what it doesn't
Mhm.
say. So the big thing about the paper is it took like hundreds of craniums. And so back in the day, what scientists used to do is they used to just like look at a skull and like kind of tally its features and kind of like look at it and figure it out in terms of what it looked like. And you could do this with something like a Neanderthal. Neanderthal skulls, for everybody out there, are very distinctive looking. Yeah, obviously they're robust, but actually like all pre-modern, pre-agricultural skulls look robust. But Neanderthal skulls are interesting is like they obviously got like the brow ridges. They also have like the recessed chin. They definitely need a chin implant. But another thing about their skull, which is a very like novel adaptation, is that they have these huge noses and this like the face kind of projects forward. Okay, with the
Look,
Neanderthal
Klingon
skull.
looking.
What?
Klingon looking almost,
A
maybe.
little bit, yeah. Well, our faces are relatively flat. Now that varies from person to person. Like babies have really flat faces, and East Asians have much flatter faces than other populations, for example, right? But on the whole, when you look at a modern human and you compare it to Neanderthals, oops, sorry about that, guys. But anyway, it is the salient aspect of the face is that it's projecting.
Right.
But obviously, this is kind of just Gestalt description. What they did in this paper and what they have been doing in paleoanthropology, computational paleoanthropology over the last, 20, 30 years is taking all these skull characteristics, putting them into an algorithm, and then relating how the skulls are to each other. And it's actually not that different. I mean, in some ways, it's exactly the same method when you do with genomics, when you do with like DNA. So DNA has a sequence, and it has like millions, billions of independent variables that are the state of the DNA, A, C, G, and T. Well, the way you can think about it, this is like they have things like, oh, the width of the skull, front and back, width of the skull, side to side. They have like, okay, like what is like the arch, like, what's the width of the arch between like these two positions on the brows, all of these things, like, how wide is the jaw. So you have all of these variables that they're using, lots of variables with all of these skulls. And what they do is, okay, like how similar are the skulls? Well, what you do is you compare all the different variables. The main result that's kind of weird for the listener, like there's two results. One is the homolongi denisovan. The Denisovans are probably homolongi. Denisovan is a genomic name. Homolongi is what paleoanthropologists have seemed to have agreed on. Um, that lineage looks to be an outgroup, like totally separate from Neanderthals and modern humans. And the second result, which is contradictory to genomics, and the second result that's kind of weird is the Homo longi crown lineage, like the crown population, which is what it diversified out of. That happened like the skulls are dated to like a million years ago. Well, genomics says that these populations didn't really split off from each other, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans, until like at the like probably around like 700,000 years ago. So it's pushing the dates further back with these skulls. And it's like the phylogeny is off. And so that's why you will see stuff in the media like new publication revolutionizes our understanding of human evolution and overturns blah blah blah. Well, that's because one, the tree is different than we thought according to this paper, and also the tree is lengthened, so it's deeper in time than we thought.
Mhm.
And so those are the primary results. But yeah. Do you, any thoughts on that, Josiah?
Um, yeah, so I'm interested. Would you say that these findings, if it's a million years ago or whatever, I mean, is this contrary to the genomic results, or it's
Yeah,
just yeah? Okay,
it's
so
contrary. I mean, it's kind of weird actually. Like, so
yeah,
I mean, what Chris Stringer, who is actually like second to last author, which basically means he's like the senior co-author on the paper. Uh, he once told me like you can think like modern humans and Neanderthals and Denisovans and all of these homos, they really don't date much more to a million years. Well, here it's kind of pushing some of the splits of the Homo lineage back to 1.5 million.
Mhm.
And so they have like let's just see. I'm looking at the paper right now, and they have like dozens. One of their figures, the phylogenetic tree, Figure 4, has dozens of specimens. Like Naledi, for example, splits off from other humans around like almost 2 million years ago. You know, and some of the stuff just looks like crazy. Like, I think Omo 2 is a modern human from like Ethiopia, and it splits off from like other types of modern humans. Like, it looks like to be like almost 600,000 years ago.
right,
That's like many fold greater. So the shape of the tree is a little weird, but what's really weird is how deep it is. And
yeah,
so this is contradicting the genetic findings. Just that's
yeah,
straight up. And it's published in Science, so that's a big deal. It's been peer reviewed.
sure. But I mean, is it? I mean, is it not possible that they just screwed up the dating somehow, or
Yeah. So
I don't know about the. I guess the like weird reverse pressure reconstruction thing that wouldn't have anything to do with the dating
well,
necessarily.
the issue that reading the paper is the dating is not like just from one individual. The weird that individual is like a very good skull that like fits into this broader context, but they have all of these skulls that they dated, and so
Yeah.
what they do is like. So my understanding is like some of them are like dated in certain ways, but the skulls are dated, and then what they do is they put the skulls into a potential phylogenetic tree, and then they move the tree around in a way. It's a Bayesian method, which basically means basically like this like, stupid way to say it. It's not basic at all. A Bayesian method is basically a situation where they're testing all these different models, and they're
Right.
testing the probability of all the different models that they have for the trees, and so it's not a simple. Well, we have a skull date here. We have a skull date here. We have a skull date here. Those are the fixed dates that they put at the model, but the model itself generates the splits between the skulls in the past. So you can have so for example, to be concrete, you could have a situation where you have a bunch of skulls that are dated within the last 100,000 years, but they diverged way in the past, and they're different in various ways. Well, what these Bayesian methods tend to do is look at how different the skulls are and use their dates to like peg where they are now, and then they create trees how far back in the past they can split. So it's like
Mhm.
they infer the splits, and the splits just look really deep here. um, and what they used was like I think, let's see, like how many. I'm just going to double check. Let's see, hundreds of Uh, so the Yushin has three crania, and they used how many landmark features? They use the landmark features is what they use. But that just means features like that you could get out of a skull. It doesn't say, but I think it's 533 landmarks and semi-landmarks on the 26 most complete hominid fossils and 153 recent human specimens. That's on their PCA. So that basically means an equivalent here would be 533 genetic markers. Okay,
Right. Right.
which, to give some context, would be an incredible number of genetic markers 25 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
we would love that many genetic markers, but it's nothing today. Like today, I think we're all both on 23andMe. Like, they have like 600,000 markers. You
Yeah.
know, and your kids, I think one of your kids is sequenced.
Yes.
She's got all 3 billion markers. Although they're
Yes.
not markers because most of them are just like part of the human reference sequence. But then she's got about like 4.5, 5 million variable positions in the genome. Okay, million.
Right.
So to cut to the chase, there's two issues here that I would point out. The number of markers is small. That's really not as big of an issue for me because 533 landmarks is a lot of landmarks.
It's a lot.
But as John Hawkes, the anthropologist, pointed this out, um, your face, your skull, the way it looks is subject to both adaptation and also environmental stuff,
Right.
and so those might not reflect the phylogeny, right? And so just to cut to the chase in terms of explaining to the reader and the listener, what one hypothesis could be the deep splits, for example, might simply be that skulls are subject to a lot of local adaptation, which makes it seem which makes it seem like there's more time between the two
Yeah.
populations than there is. That's what we might be seeing. So whenever humans spread out, they start diversifying in their physical appearance, and that includes their skull in lots of ways. If it's just random and it's not subject to fitness, unless there's like a really extreme bottleneck, it's going to be a pretty good gauge of the molecular clock of the rate of evolution. But if it's subject to natural selection, it's not going to be a good gauge because it's not a real clock. Like
Mhm.
sometimes it'll be totally frozen and sometimes it'll evolve a lot. And so what I'm saying here is let's say you have two populations that separate, their skulls change a lot because of adaptation. Well, if you didn't know that there was adaptation or your model doesn't have adaptation in it, you're going to think that their split is far deeper in the past than it really is. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and we don't have genetic material from these particular skulls. It's like they're
Some of them
just
we do. A couple of them we do are Denisovans. That's how they identify that Homo longi is Denisovan,
well, not.
right?
I'm talking about these three skulls in
No, we
particular.
don't have any genetic
Yeah.
material from these three skulls.
Because
And the skulls date to the Middle Paleolithic. Let's just check it. So Middle Paleolithic goes from, okay, so they're about 1 million years old. But the Middle Paleolithic, I think, goes from a Middle Pleistocene, from 1.5 million years ago to 130,000 years ago. 130,000 years ago was an interglacial called the Eemian, and that's kind of on the precipice when modern humans start spreading, right? And so
right.
these are really, really. We don't have DNA, human DNA. I think older than 450,000 years at this point.
Right.
Uh, there's not that many humans, and DNA degrades.
Yeah. Right. 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 That makes sense. Because Neanderthals, they have kind of been known about in the popular imagination in the scientific community for a long, long time. I feel like we have a decently good grasp of their history. Of course, we're learning stuff all the time. We didn't know about interbreeding or whatnot until, I don't know, 15 years ago. But Denisovans, I don't know when they were first discovered, but they're kind of newer on the scene, and it does seem like there's a number of different finds that are probably all like Denisovans. Like you're talking about the Homo longi, but also Dragon Man or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
which
I
is
did
separate.
podcast a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not the hobbits. So there's a lot more. It feels a lot newer, and we just don't have as sure a footing with regard to them as we do, uh, you know,
Yeah,
modern
yeah,
humans, Neanderthals, maybe even Homo erectus or something like that. But
yeah, yeah. One thing I would say is we have a lot of Denisovan remains. They just were not identified as Denisovan. The whole like archaeological uh, just set up in East. I mean, basically, look, communism sucks. This is like, I mean, we talk about this kind of on this podcast. Communism sucks. And one
right,
thing communism and Maoism did is basically to disrupt archaeology and paleoanthropology in East
right,
Asia for decades. And so they're just kind of picking up the pieces after these decades. And so they're starting to identify, classify, organize. There's like a lot of work to do. So we have a lot of samples that, but they will be identified as like Heelan Jong 714,
right,
and it's in a
right.
drawer somewhere, and no one's looked at it, or it's like Heelan Jong 714 and Heelan Jong 713. Well, actually, we think we mixed them up, and that some of the pieces of one is with the other, and vice versa. So it's a total mess in terms of how to reassemble it. While in Europe, you have a continuous tradition of antiquarianism and archaeology, sometimes sponsored by, the King of Norway, I think, for example, is like a famous funder of archaeology and paleoanthropology. Like so some of the stuff, not Lucy, but I think Tom Child or Turkana Boy. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just saying like Europeans are really interested in these topics and they funded it in stable governments for decades. And so we have like really good, well annotated, I guess we would say, fossils. We don't have that in East Asia, so it's kind of a mess. This is a science paper. This is legit. They use legit methods, but that doesn't mean that the result is true. I think that this is an interesting result. And I think one thing that I will say, and John Hawkes, and you guys should check out John Hawkes' Substack, just like look it up. He's commented on this. One issue is Denisovans, these Zongi populations who themselves are diverse, might have admixture from Homo erectus, from like older, more archaic homos that were in East Asia, and that might be one reason their skulls look distinct in these analyses from Neanderthals and modern humans, because in whole genome analyses, it just seems pretty clear that Denisovans and Neanderthals are closer together. So, like one model you can have, which is a plausible model, is they split from our ancestors, let's say like 700,000 years ago, and then they split from each other like 600,000 years ago, like something like that, or or it could be like 600,000 and 450,000, whatever, like give or take, right? But it's like that sort of situation. And that seems pretty well established genetically. But like in these results, they're reporting pretty robustly that the skulls show that Denisovans are the distinct outgroup. Well, why could that be? Well, one reason it could be is they have like low levels of admixture from another archaic group that
Hmm.
for some reason was well selected to I don't know what it would be, but well selected to the conditions of East Asia, and so it pulls them away from their ancestral phenotype,
Yeah.
right? And so that's
Is
what we might be saying.
there? So Tibetans at some point interbred with some sort
Yes.
of archaic group to get the
Denisovans, yes. It's a
alleles.
Denisovan.
Denisovans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that EPAS, you're talking about EPAS 1, which
Yeah.
is an adaptation, high altitude adaptation gene. It's clearly an old high altitude Denisovan adaptation that
Right.
they got. And so every population east of the Indus seems to have very low levels of Denisovan ancestry. So the listeners, many of them know the result. The Papuans and Melanesians, they have like 2, 3, 4%. I think it's like closer to 3 to 4%. It was estimated to be higher initially, but it's 2 to 3 to 4. It's like 3 to 4% Denisovan ancestry. But like a lot of people, like I have like probably like 0.2% Denisovan ancestry, something like
Right.
that. So in East Asia, it's like 0.15. In South Asia, it's like 0.2. In Southeast Asia, it's like 0.25. Amerindians have like zero point 0.1, whatever. But there's low levels of Denisovan ancestry all over East Asia. And so a lot of adaptation things probably came in through Denisovans originally. Because, that's
Yeah.
a low percentage, but think about it. Zero point 0.2 across 19,000 genes,
Right.
few million base pairs, it can add up.
Yes. Right. And presumably, I mean, some of the stuff is going to be adaptive, and some of the stuff is going to be incompatible, and the incompatible stuff's going to bleed out over time. But the adaptive
Yes.
stuff will spread, you know,
Yes.
potentially like
That's
wildfire.
exactly correct. That's
Yeah.
exactly correct. So, I guess what I'm saying is like this is a great paper, but I think people should be just a little careful about extrapolating too far. And it's like one of those things that's almost like an artifact of the way you write scientific papers. Yeah, you cite other science, but you act like this particular result is kind of alone. But look,
Right.
in the context of what I'm talking about, it kind of makes sense that you're getting these patterns because of adaptation or something, or deeper admixture, right?
Yeah.
And that's why there's contradiction with the genomic data. I think that that's like pretty obvious. And I wish the way the scientific papers were written, I think they could be like kind of like admit it a little bit more. And I think part of it is just like the limits of time and space and stuff like that, which is kind of ridiculous because like it's all on the internet now. You can make it super long, but like they, because they still print it. On the other hand, I will say, imagine if we had limitations of space for legislation, right? It
Right.
would be more concise. They would get down to the pith, and they would like say what they really had to say instead of just like adding things over and over again. So sometimes limitations in space are actually good. To be fair.
That's right. All right. So to sum up, I think to quote Arrested Development, the jury's still out on science. So we're going to have to wait to see how
Yeah,
it's.
yeah, the jury is still out, but the whole process is what it's about, right? It's not
Yeah.
about the result; it's about the process. It's like it's a cringe
Yeah.
cliche thing to say, but that's reality.
That's right.
So in terms of like the jury's out in the process, like we're having a stoppage of process, I think, in this country and the federal government. So why don't
So
you
hold on. Before
what?
actually, that was a brilliant
Mhm.
segue, and I
Uh,
hate to interrupt it because it was so good. But as we were talking, I remembered there was another topic that I wanted to talk about briefly that I hadn't mentioned to you. It does have a science genetics angle to it, although it's not primarily about that. Well, it's it's so the yogurt shop murders. Okay, so Razib, you didn't grow up in Austin. Most people in Austin didn't grow up in Austin, so you probably are not. I don't know if you're familiar with the yogurt shop murders or not, but if you lived in Austin in the early '90s, this was like a big deal. In 19, you had it was I think it was a frozen yogurt shop called I Can't Believe It's Yogurt, something like that.
yeah. Okay.
And uh, it was four teenage girls. A couple of them were working behind the counter, and then a couple of their friends, maybe the sister of one of them. And it was around closing time, and like someone came into the shop and basically killed them all, and then set the shop on fire. Right. So this, especially in the early '90s, Austin was not. I mean, it was much smaller than it is now. It's never been a particularly violent or crime filled thing. So this was like a major story. Is like who did this, and it was not because of the fire. A lot of the potential evidence was destroyed, so they didn't know for a long time. There were no arrests or anything like that, and then in the late '90s. So this was the early '90s. In the late '90s, so at this point the case is I don't know 7, 8 years old, and the Austin government sets up a kind of like cold case department, right? And as part of that, they go back over and they start re-interviewing some people. And there are these four teenage boys, right? One of whom was found with a weapon which was similar to the weapon that was used in the robbery or whatnot. And so they interrogate. I mean, now they're not. They were teenagers at the time, but at this point they would be in their 20s. And so they interrogate them, and two of them kind of confess, and so they put them on trial. Uh, there's not a lot of evidence actually, like linking them to them, other than the confession, because you know so much of the stuff was destroyed. But the two guys who confessed get convicted. The other two, I don't think the state ultimately ended up pursuing charges because they didn't think they could win. Um, and this is a story with many acts and reversals. So I'm sorry that I
Yeah.
have to go through
No,
all
no, no.
this,
I'm
but
looking it up right now. Sounds crazy.
yeah. So they're convicted, but then um, like another 10 years or so go by, and the convictions get overturned because the two guys were tried separately, and they used their confessions against the other one. You know, which is a constitutional no-no. So they wanted, the state wants to like retry these guys, but they also realize like the evidentiary basis is kind of weak. And in the meantime, there was some DNA that was recovered because one of the girls had been sexually assaulted. And so they have this DNA. And of course, in the early 90s, there's not much you could do with that, right? Maybe you could do like, you couldn't even do blood typing, I guess. But at this point, genomics had advanced to the point where they thought, well, maybe we could get some, we can identify somebody through this. And this is it's a big process because they test all the four kids, the four suspects, and it comes back that the DNA does not belong to any of them, right? Mm-hmm. And then they do a like worldwide search. They go to the FBI and it's like, hey, you got everybody's DNA. Do this, and they get a hit, but whoever it is anonymous. Like his name is not in there, and so there's a multi-year like back and forth about like whether you can use this, and like they end up having to pass like special legislation during the Biden administration, I think, in order to be able to do this. And so just last week, I think C.C. Moore is the one who did the analysis. Yeah. You may know. Yeah.
I know her.
Yeah. And so it turned out that this anonymous match was not the person either. But they have now definitively identified who the person is. He was this serial killer named Robert Eugene Brashers, I believe is his name. And he had been known to the police, had killed people in other states in like Missouri, Tennessee, or whatnot. He's dead now. He's been dead. I think he killed himself almost 20 years ago or something. So there's nothing that can be done, with respect to that. But we do at least finally know who did it, and I think it's pretty definitive.
Yeah.
It's not like if it had been one of the teenage boys, then you could say, well, were all of the others involved or so. But like a serial killer is not going to be working with like a bunch of teenage kids, So almost certainly he was doing it by himself. I've even skipped over, like in this recitation of the facts, I've skipped over other stuff because there was like another serial killer who was in the area that day, who was like a suspect for a while, but he was eliminated. So it's been like an up and down, and it's kind of been for people who really remember the old Austin. It's kind of been almost an open wound for like 35 years. You have a traumatic event, and there's just no resolution to it. So hopefully. Yeah. Now at least there's some resolution, and there is a genetics angle to it, Yeah,
there is. And let me explain a little bit at the high level what's going on and why people can do these things that they couldn't do 30 years ago. So when these murders happened, at that time, you needed a lot of DNA from any sample to really genetically test it. What happened in the mid to late 90s, one change is something called polymerase chain reaction, is a method that you can take a tiny amount of DNA and amplify it up. Right. So in the original mitochondrial DNA studies from the 1980s, if you watch the Nova documentary, you see that they collected placenta from women who had given birth because placenta had a lot of tissue, a lot of blood, a lot of tissue, right? Mm-hmm. And mitochondrial DNA is very copious. You have many, many hundreds of mitochondria in each cell, okay? But the mitochondrial DNA is not going to tell you that much. When it comes to forensics, you want the person's nuclear DNA when there's only one copy of that per cell. And so, you need a lot of, frankly, you need a lot of tissue, a lot of blood or something, and you don't have that, obviously, for a lot of forensic sites. Okay, that's one thing. In the mid to late 1990s, polymerase chain reaction totally transformed. that because all of a sudden you could take a small amount of DNA and blow it up. But what do you do with the DNA once you get it? Initially, there weren't really good. Well, there wasn't sequencing. We didn't have a whole genome until the year 2000, and there weren't
Yeah.
these array technologies that get like thousands and thousands of genetic positions. What you did is you use these hypervariable sites called microsatellites or STRs, and you look at those, and there might be like 8 to 16 to 21 on that order, and so those are not very granular. They can tell you probably that I'm not Josiah,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but they're not going to really. Or they could tell you if Josiah was my brother, but they're not
Right.
going to tell you much more, you know. And obviously, like okay, like let's say you have 8 sites. You have
Yeah.
8 sites in the genome. Now, STRs have a lot of alleles because they're like copy number things, but still, it's not like having three. It's not like having a million base pairs. Okay, there's a
Right.
lot of things you can't do analytically. So now we have DNA being amplified, and we can look at the whole genome, and we have methods also, computational methods. So, for example, another thing is like, let's say you have. I mean, for example, obviously you have like blood mixing together. You have two people's blood.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the victim and like the perp. I mean, it's not like that difficult, but it'll be a little gnarly to like But like now you have computational methods where you just put it in a computer. The computer will be able to recognize that these are two people's sequences,
Yeah.
and it'll split them apart, and so then you can see who the new person is. Looking at I was reading while you were talking, and they used genetic genealogy. So they initially, so they didn't have Brasher's DNA. He committed suicide in '99. So what they did is they looked at this unknown DNA that they had discovered,
Yeah.
and they looked at genetic genealogy data banks, and they found his relatives.
Right. Right.
They were his relatives, and so that's how they identified that it was probably Brasher.
Yeah.
They're all people related to this Brasher guy, and so they did some exhumation. It's not ancient DNA. He died in 1999. So it's
Right.
like there's plenty of DNA there, and then
Yeah.
there's a match, and that's how you figure it out. So for all the deceased serial killers, your reputations
Yeah. Yeah. It's
are going
just
to be dragged through the mud. We will know.
right.
You know?
Although mostly, I mean, I don't know. Was this also the case with the State
Yes,
Killer?
that was a pioneer case that this was done. So they
But
actually, it looks like they started like looking at this when the Golden State Killer thing happened in 2018. Like they said,
yes.
it took that many years to finally like figure it out.
Yeah. I wonder. I mean, I don't. I think you're right. Is this like the secrets of history are no longer safe and a lot of this stuff. And I wonder. I don't know if there's any genetic material from like Jack the Ripper or whatever. If they could try and put that one to
Yeah,
bed.
I think the main issue with Jack the Ripper is there probably would have been genetic material if they had like normal forensics
They
labs that
probably
like
wouldn't have.
saved it.
Yeah, they saved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so
I think that they tried to do things like look at like a letter the Ripper had sent, supposedly. I don't know, but it did. They didn't get enough data. I think.
yeah. So I mean, this is it's very interesting. I'm sure there will be more cases like this, one way or the other, but just a cultural movement. Okay, so I felt like I wanted to talk about that, even though I'm sure a lot of our listeners are not old time Austinites, and so it doesn't really mean anything to them. But the implications, I think, are significant for everybody.
No, that's good. That's good. That's good. All right. The government's shut down.
Government is shut down. Yes.
Okay. I think the shutdown stuff. This is what I'm gonna say about the shutdown stuff. It seems like it's a big deal in the moment, but we always forget about it. But I think there's
Right.
one thing about like firing potential bureaucrats that is a twist. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, uh, I the shutdown thing. I feel like has played out enough times that there is almost a script to it where it it'll last. I mean, maybe it'll last a few days. Maybe it'll be over by the time this episode even comes out. But ultimately it'll probably last a couple weeks, and then always, I mean, pretty much always, when you have a shutdown, whoever is trying to leverage the shutdown for some sort of policy change ends up losing. So um, we've had shutdowns in the past that were related to trying to get rid of Obamacare, that were
Yes.
related to like immigration. In this case, the ostensible reason has to do with wanting to restore some Medicaid stuff that was eliminated by the big beautiful bill and the
Yeah.
rescissions thereof. And basically, whoever tries, like, it's just not an effective leverage point because
Yeah.
people, in the short term, I don't know that people take the government shutdowns as seriously as they're taken in Washington. But
Uh-huh.
to the extent that, after a week or two, when they start to like affect real people's lives, I mean, inevitably you have one side saying, "Hey, we can end the shutdown now. Let's just do a clean CR," and the other side saying, "No, we need to do this, policy change that some people are for and some people are against." That's just like the clean CR is the obvious winning hand in those negotiations. So I suspect we will, that will happen. We'll get something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even. I mean, I feel a tiny bit of sympathy for government employees, but the reality is they always get their back pay. So if you're a non-essential worker in a government shutdown, okay, you don't get paid during the shutdown, but then when the shutdown is over, you always get your back pay. You didn't have to work in the meantime. It can be a hassle if you don't, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, but if you're a government worker, especially since this thing happens repeatedly, like if I worked for the government, I would just have like a reserve. I mean, you should have a reserve anyway, but especially because it's just like, okay, every 5 or 6 years, there's going to be a shutdown and I won't get paid for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I can't feel terribly sorry for them because of that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, one issue here, and maybe this is a problem in the economy in general. Like, let's be honest. We have people who have fake jobs that are dumb,
Right.
and many of them are in the government. You don't really need them.
Yeah.
No one knows what they do. They don't really do much. I see. And this is not just government. There's I've many years ago I worked I work study job in college, and I worked for a woman that worked in the you know it was the administrative office that handled like tuition. Like I think it would have been the bursar back in the day, but it's like handle the tuition, the registration. It's like that's that place you went at the university. It was like the administrative office. You go to the university to do that stuff. She worked there as like a clerk, full time clerk, and I know that because she told me. But she also had a side job with some like marketing stuff that I was helping her with, and she
Right.
would be at home 3 out of 5 days, working from home. But she was not working.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I think she was just acting busy when she was in the office. And then she would have the side job that she did, you know?
Yes. Right.
And
Right.
that was just like opened my eyes to like types of office jobs where they're not really working. And they're really, really concentrated in government, and to a lesser extent, some nonprofits and academia, you know? Whereas like companies that like have to like have a profit motive and, you know, revenue goes down or revenue goes up based on what you do.
Right. Right.
Whereas, like, at the government, that doesn't. So, I'm not a big fan of the shutdown in the abstract way. It's just like, we shouldn't be running our country like this. But,
Yeah.
I mean, this is maybe the libertarian side of me, but it's just like, damn, like, some of these people, it's like, it'd just be great to get rid of them. It'd be great to get rid of, like, 30 to 40% of the government employees, in my opinion. That's what I would say.
Yes.
Um,
I mean,
I,
at
'cause,
least, in
yeah,
my
at
opinion,
least.
it would constitute.
I mean, I don't know if it's a full Elon thing where like he got rid of 80% and it didn't really matter too much, But there's a lot of people, and government jobs, working for the federal government is like a cushy thing. It's like an aspiration for some people. Like to be candid, um, you know, someone like I work at a tech company, okay, and we have like many more opportunities for growth and higher salaries and stuff like that. But we got to work. Like we
Right.
got we got real results and real deliverables, and obviously I don't have a guaranteed job. You know,
Yes. Right.
I don't like I've been moving from job to job for years. You know, that's just what you do in life. I mean, you've been at our street for a while, lucky you, but that happens too. But if you're at the government, like you don't get fired. My understanding is they don't really fire people.
Right. Right.
Well, if
It's
you
very
don't,
different.
if you don't, if there's no threat of being fired, what is
Yeah.
your incentive to do anything?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so I'm just saying. So I think me, it's like I'm not like feeling too stressed out about this. Let's see it. And like there's a whole Russ Vought thing where I think he's talking about like not like firing people during the shutdown, and then they would hire different people. It's a way to replace the bureaucracy that we have,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I mean, 30%. I might go higher than 30%. I
Yeah,
don't know. I mean, could you? I guess it depends on like let's say like who counts as a federal employee. So you have to talk about like non-military or whatever because that screws up calculations, I think. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of government work, as you say, there's like originally, I think that the original deal was supposed to be, you got paid less than in the private sector, but you had more job security, right?
yes. I
Um,
mean, benefits were good.
yeah, and now I feel like it's more like you have more job security, and the pay is comparable, if not better, than what you could get in similar. Well, at least at the low end, at the high end, because uh, there are caps. At the high end, you are taking a significant pay cut. There's
Yeah.
I guess what they call wage compression. Um,
Yes.
so
And that's why people go to lobbying and they do other things once they've hit a
right,
certain like
yeah,
ceiling. I think.
that's a problem right there. Because you're not getting the talent that you need at the high end. But like at the low to mid end, these are relatively cushy jobs compared to a lot of stuff in the private sector, and so the system I don't think works that well. I would like to see, if not a full Elon, then at least a half Elon, maybe a 2/4 Elon. But I don't think that's what's going to come out of this either. I think it'll just be back to where we started. And, frankly, it would be nice if the government could even just pass a budget.
Yeah.
We haven't passed a budget, I think, since 2018, something like that. Trump
Yeah.
managed it for 1 year, and then before that, it had been another 10 years where we had not passed a budget. So everything is just, it's all even like the normal operating procedure without a shutdown is you wait to the last minute, you negotiate some sort of temporary CR, and then you just do it that way, which is not. I mean, that's a guarantee almost to lead yourself into these sorts of situations. So,
Yeah.
um, I would like to say to Congress, get your act together, but I don't have a lot of optimism that that's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So I'm looking at it before 2015. So I think it was like 2016 that passed a budget, but only passed 12 regular appropriations bills on time in 4 years. Fiscal
Yeah.
years 77, 89, 95, and 97. So when we were in college, kind of like that period,
Right.
they passed a budget in 95 and 97. So it was like maybe like I had a perception that was normal, but it's not normal actually.
Yes.
And also 89, 95, and 97. Like that's, you know what I'm saying?
That's
Stuff
yeah.
is happening.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's basically the entire period of the modern budgeting process started in the late 70s. I don't actually know what they did before exactly how that worked, but so the whole system, it just doesn't seem like it works. We need to do it a different way. States are basically able to pass budgets. I don't think that there are any states that have a similar that have this similar problem that the federal government does, and a lot of that is, I think, a lot of states, it's a constitutional requirement that they have to pass a budget or something like that. But for whatever reason, it's certainly possible to do it, and but the way Congress operates, it just rarely, if ever, happens. So that would be, I think, a big improvement if someone could solve that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so much with the government, with the federal government, where it's like, I mean, so for example, the DoD can't pass an audit.
Right. Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. Um, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of ruin in a nation, as Adam Smith said, and that's definitely apparent when it comes to the federal government.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we can do like predictions. I mean, I don't think this is going to go that long. I think the Democrats are doing it. My understanding is kind of because some of their constituencies, their core activist constituencies, are pissed, just like the Republicans did during the Obama years. Where it was like,
Right.
look, they're not. I mean, most of them are not retarded. Like, I mean, Ted Cruz is not retarded. Like, in a
Right.
way, he knew, because like I remember, look, I'm not like a big fan of. Well, I mean, I'm not a political person. I'm not a politician, so I'm not a fan of like some of this stuff. So I remember he would just like he had this thing where he was like, just don't blink, and I'm like, what does that even mean? I mean, yeah, it's just like, oh, you're just gonna
Right.
like wait. You're just gonna like let the government be just shut down indefinitely. I mean, come
Right.
on. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, it's not like you're not being real. You're just like being performative and kind of like just showing your people that you're tough and you're badass. So I think that's what they want to do. Like, oh, like we can be tough and badass too. And
Right.
Schumer's kind of a pushover. I think the Democrats are having some problems with not great talent or geriatrics. So Schumer was a very talented guy.
Hmm.
Like perfect SAT type guy. He used to work at ETS, I think, as a tutor, and obviously, but he's been around in the Senate
Yes.
since the late '90s now. He's not a young man.
Right.
He's older, and then
He's
you have
looked
Hakeem
over his
Jeffrey.
Yeah. He's gonna look over his shoulder at AOC or whatever.
Yeah, and then you have Hakeem Jeffries, who just like seems like kind of like not that great. As he's not a very
Mhm.
dynamic politician, and
Right.
he also doesn't have like LGB LG LBJ like legislative skills. Like I mean, Hakeem Jeffries was like
Yeah.
candidly, I think he was like a young, attractive, moderate black guy.
Right.
I
Right.
think okay, that'd be a great house. That'd be a great leader in the house, right? But
Right.
he hasn't. I mean, so for example, like Pelosi, like whatever you want to say about her, like she was an operator. She was a live player. You know.
Hmm. Right.
Uh, I mean, like, we both know we're not like we're in and around political circles. Like Republicans were not fans of Pelosi, but they were not fans of her partly because she was so effective at getting stuff done that they disagreed with.
Right.
So it was not like they were fans of her and they laughed. It was like they were
Yes.
fans of her. They were not, or they were not fans of her and they laughed. It was like they were not fans of her and they were like worried that
Hmm.
she would out operate the Republicans. Which
Right.
she passed. She was the one who pushed through. She was the one who like ultimately pushed through Obamacare. Like it
Right.
seemed like from what I remember, like all the stuff that I've heard, Obama was pretty close to blinking. Rahm Emanuel did want to blink. You
Yes.
know,
Right.
and she was like, "No, we're gonna get this done. We're gonna
Right.
get this done." And
Yeah.
she pushed it through. So Hakeem Jeffries is not like that. He's
Hmm.
just kind of passive, and so I think we have a situation where the Democratic constituencies, the activists, are angry, and this is just
Right.
something they can do. They're not competent. I mean, Schumer's competent, but like I don't know, Hakeem
Yes.
Jeffries, they're not
Right.
competent to do anything, but they can just like do this, like, oh, we'll shut down the government there.
Right.
It's
Right.
kind of like cutting off your nose and be like, look what I did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I just feel like shutdowns they're theater. I don't know what you think. I think they're generally theater.
They're definitely theater. Yes, I agree with that. And this one, possibly even more than most, because I don't even know. I mean, listening to people, to like liberals and Democrats talk about it, they don't even it. I don't get the sense that they believe they're going to win. I think you know they're kind of going through the motions in a way where they feel like they have to do something to show that they're standing up to the Republicans, but
Yeah,
that they recognize, and maybe they get some good press out of it because they're fighting for people's health care, but they recognize that ultimately they are going to have to give in and come up with something that is close to a clean CR, like get enough people to support that. So I could be wrong. That's the sense. I mean, that's my sense of the likely scenario, and that also seems to be their sense of it. You know, um,
Yeah.
so it seems to be more theatery than even a typical shutdown, which is pretty theatery.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing is, I don't know the details of this. Is, I think Russ Vought is and others are saying, okay, well, we can like fire people and then hire different people
Right.
through the shutdown,
Yeah.
which would allow them to replace, because a lot of these government bureaucrats, they're on the other team, they're Democrats,
Yeah, but
so
they haven't. I mean, at least at this moment, I haven't seen that they have actually done that. I've heard rumors, but
yeah. As we're recording, yeah, it's shut down. So
yeah. Um,
yeah,
so that'll be interesting. If I had to put I suspect it'll probably go a week. So I think the next time we record, it'll probably still be going on, but it could be over by then, and I don't
yeah.
think it'll be going on, more than a couple weeks, I would say.
Well, okay, well, I think I think we both agree that this is like kind of like a circus, but it's not like an entertaining circus. So maybe we should move to our last topic:
Okay, yes,
apotheosis and godhood.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we're gonna talk about Mormonism,
Right.
and LDS, and actually, yeah, it says paywall, but like obviously, but why don't you cut to the chase about the issue, why we're talking about the Latter Day Saints?